Well, good afternoon, Bob.
Well, good afternoon, Bill.
I have a confession to make.
You do?
I made a mistake. I got ahead of myself, so this was supposed to be episode 50, but it's episode 51.
Okay.
Because we wanted to do something really, really, really special for the 50th, but we really get to do something really, really special for the 51st podcast. And it's really, really good to have our friend Carolyn Hibbard here. Carolyn, you haven't been here since the pandemic started.
Oh, I feel deprived for sure.
Well, listen, we are very deprived. So
it is strange because you are literally
next door,
less than a mile away,
and still isolated. Yes, yes.
So you've been a part of the Keswick family for a long period of time.
Forever.
How long has it been since you started playing at America's Keswick?
It was in the 60s, Bill, when John and I first came.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And were you doing the summer conferences, or were you doing some other things besides that?
We would do 2 weeks each summer as part of the musical team because, of course, they didn't have in-residence people like Robert and Joyce. And so couples would come in, or single, but mostly couples. And so we were one of the musical couples.
And then you also did music with Dot Worth, if I remember correctly.
Yes, every year she had a women's conference. That was before you had your large conferences here for women. And that brought in, several hundred women.
I was curious, what was the piano like back in the 60s?
Not as good as the pianos are today, but certainly doable. I never had an upright here, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Always a grand piano.
Yes.
That's great.
One was the small one, as I recall.
Well, we're kind of excited because, some people get rid of their pianos and get rid of their organs. And there's a really cool story about this piano. Maybe it'd be good for you to tell the folks the story about this one.
Well, this Steinway was part of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
And a lady purchased it, had it reconditioned, and donated it to this building when this building opened up.
And I remember it was donated, but I didn't know from where.
The last person to play it
was Horowitz.
And if I remember the story correctly, he wanted to do a concert with a candelabra over the piano, but he didn't want electric, he wanted candles. And the wax dripped on the piano lid, and that sort of made this unauthentic. So we've been blessed with that, but it's a real good possibility that we're going to get another one just like this.
Oh, my
Which
goodness.
is pretty amazing. God is so good.
Well, now you've really intimidated me. I did not know its history.
Well, Robert's played it more than Horowitz did, so he's got his touch.
Intimidates me.
Well, why don't you share with our listeners, what are you going to play for us?
First one I'm going to play is For the Beauty of the Earth. And I love this hymn around the fall of the year because we're in a Thanksgiving mode, and every verse has different things for which we can be thankful. And I think if ever there was a time when our hearts need to be grateful in spite of what's going on, it's now. So I do say hallelujah and praise the Lord for all he is and all he does.
Good, play for us.
I would love it if you would just tell us a little bit about your training for playing the piano. How did that all transpire? What was your training like?
Well, my parents truly sacrificed to give me lessons, as yours probably did, Robert. I remember back in the day when my lesson was $2, and it was
Wow.
a stretch for us.
But $2 would have been a good chunk of change.
It was a chunk of change, you're right, and I'm so grateful that they felt the necessity to do that for their girls. So I started when I was 7 years old, and I moved to Collingswood, New Jersey, when my father was conference president of the Wesleyan Methodist Middle Atlantic States. And so they had a home in Collingswood, and that's where we lived. And right across the street was a very well-known piano teacher. In fact, she was the teacher of Harold DeCoux and others in that area, but only classical, nothing else. So I was about 9 when I moved there, and I lived there until I went to nurse's training when I was 18. But the piano teacher would walk her dog, and we didn't have air conditioning back in those days, and so the windows were up, and she, had the ear to hear me playing, and the living room was out towards the sidewalk, so she could hear it, come across the porch as she was walking. And she said to me at one of my lessons, Carolyn, I heard you playing the other night, and I'm glad that you enjoy just sitting down to play. And I said, yes, I do. Now, she was a teacher, Robert, that you only ever did classical, and every piece you had to memorize. So it was a wonderful way to teach me to get my mind to remember the notes. So anyway, she said, you weren't playing what I had assigned for the week. And I said, no, I wasn't. I said, I'm playing in Sunday school now. And I was about 12, I guess. And she said, well, I want you to bring me that book. Now, she was a Catholic woman who didn't any idea of what our little choruses were that we were singing, Do Lord and all that stuff in Sunday school. So she said, bring me the book, and I want to hear what you're doing. So I brought it, and I didn't really feel intimidated by that because I just thought, well, she just wants to know. But she saw me improvising. She said, where did you get those notes that you put in your right hand? I said, oh, well, they were in the left-hand chord, and I just transferred. She said, well, that's what you do. So when she heard me try to do a run, she said, I want every student of mine to do a clean run. So if you're going to do that, you practice them in every key that you can. So even though she was not, quote, an evangelical or a person who knew about congregational stuff, she taught me. And then I had only classical music till I was 19.
And you, you also play by ear?
Yes. I didn't feel that was my greatest ability, but I kind of nurtured it because, well, mostly when I came to Keswick, you guys just pull everything out. And I had to go, whoa, what key is that in? Because, see, the memorization part was, I knew what the key was in the hymn book, but you guys were in another key, so it was good for me.
Yeah, and that's kind of hard to explain to somebody because you memorized it in one key, but to be able to transpose that in your head, like that's really something that people say all the time to us. How do you know to do that? I don't know that we have a good answer. Like, it's a God thing.
No, it is a God thing, Bill. And I do think it's the ear that develops because then you know you're in a certain key and you kind of know where you're headed. But truly, I've learned so much from both of you doing that. You're the two greatest improvisational people I know.
Well, we love pulling you along with us. So what's the next hymn you're going to play?
let me see. I'm going to do Wonderful Grace of Jesus.
Oh, I love that arrangement.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting. All of us have our own little
Yes.
quirky thing that we do that gives us our own sound. And I remember when Zach was little, I collect all these piano things on my iPod. And he'd be sitting in the car as a young kid after we had been here, and he was got a little bigger, and he'd say, "Oh, that's Michael Faircloth. Oh, that's Mrs. Hibbard." So
You're good, Zach.
you've got that little touch. So for us, we've only known you for 23 years. And that we got connected because of America's Keswick. But actually, Jan and I got to know you in an interesting way because I was playing the piano, 40 years ago, for the Sunday breakfast mission in Philadelphia.
Right.
They had a morning Sunday broadcast that we taped. And the kids would hop in the car with me and Jan. We'd get down and record. But on the way home, we always listened to this church radio program from Pemberton's First Baptist.
Oh, get out.
And I would
Isn't
hear this melodic, droning voice of Pastor John Hibbard say, "All right, Carolyn, now what are you going to play for us?"
Yeah, right.
So we got to know you way before we ever got to meet you face to face.
Oh.
How long did you play at Pemberton?
We were there 30 years. So they heard me morning, evening, Wednesday, Bible school, Sunday school, whatever.
And you
know
had
how
a
it
really
is,
cool
Robert.
thing going there because you not only played the piano, you were the church secretary.
Church secretary, and then I became the choir director.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of like whatever God laid before me and however I could best help my husband.
So, in addition to the conferences here at Keswick, you've had some really neat opportunities to play for some really cool people. Early on in your career, you played for Dr. and Mrs. Jack Murray. What was that all about?
That was wonderful. That was during seminary days. And John just felt like it kept his head above water from all the studies because he said, here I am studying all this theology, all this stuff in seminary, but now I can get out and do something. And so each weekend we would travel with Jack, and during the summer we went on his summer crusades. And of course, I was such, I don't know, I just was so blessed to have Eleanor Murray as a mentor on the piano. She had been a piano major from Wheaton, or organ major, one or the other. And so we traveled a lot. I did it even when I started having children. We'd take the babies along and we'd go on crusades, and there I'd be on the piano bench.
Now, did you play just for the congregational singing, or did you accompany some other folks?
Congregational singing, and all of the soloists he would bring in if they needed, because back then they didn't use much taped background. So I got wonderful experience, accompanying, and I enjoyed that too.
And then I think you did a couple things with Dr. Leighton Ford, if I remember the story correctly.
Well, actually, it was Jack Van Impe.
Okay.
That's who it was.
Okay.
And there was a big crusade at the Cherry Hill Ice Arena, and John led the choir, and I played for all the services, and we actually made a big, long-playing record from that club, from the crusade, yeah.
Did you say record?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, what is a record?
You know what a record is? Yeah, and the long-playing ones, what were they, 78s?
Wow.
Something like that, yeah.
78s were the fast speed ones, and then 33 and a third
33s.
were the...
Oh, well, it must have been a 33 and a
But you
third.
know what's kind of cool is that the millennials are bringing back LPs.
Are they?
Yeah, their record players they're kind of expensive.
Yes.
And you could tell a
sure.
story about your son. They kind of like...
Well, Jordan actually purchased we purchased him for Christmas a record player that would also convert it to a CD, but he prefers to listen to the old
Does
jazz
he?
records. Yes.
Goodness, you have to go to thrift
That's
shops
right.
for them.
Oh yeah. Well, here in Whiting with the estate sales, we pick up some
I bet you
dandies,
do.
and
And they
tell
talk
'em
about
I
they,
have-
they talk about the kids sitting in a living room or a den, and they like watching the turntable go.
well, what I think is interesting, if you put a CD in,
Right.
your tendency is to carry on and do your work. But when Jordan puts on a record, we all sit down and we listen to it.
How about that?
And life slows down a little bit for a few minutes.
Well, that's a good thing, Robert. I
So what's your
understand.
next hymn?
My next one will be Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Love that.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great chords in there as well.
Thank you.
You have 2 CDs available
Actually,
that
I have
are
3.
non-Christmas, and then you have a Christmas
Oh,
CD.
there you go. Right. 2 that are non-Christmas
Yep.
and 1 that is. Yeah.
And folks could call in and order those through America's Keswick.
Yep. 1-800-453-7942.
But did you have a criteria when you were choosing the songs that you wanted to record? What was your criteria for choosing the songs that you chose?
Well, first of all, Robert, I had never done them, so I didn't realize that you could just make a CD with 12 or 15 songs. So I ended up putting 20 on each line. So it's really a long playing CD. I guess favorites of mine, and then when some folks heard, like family members and so forth, that I was doing it, they said, oh, play this one for me or play that. So that's kind of how it happened. There were definitely ones that John liked particularly, so I wanted to do that for him. And then ones that I could play. There are some arrangements that are just, hard. And I prefer not to use music when I'm doing them, and so that limited me a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I came up with what was what.
An interesting thing takes place. Every other year or every couple years, we have the opportunity to play with 5 grand pianos. Michael Faircloth, Dick Tunney, Bill Welte,
So
you,
much fun. Yeah.
and myself. And I just remember last year, and I mean this in the right way, it was like we all just were in awe of how you are continuing to minister. And let me just say, in a lot of respects, when you sit and you play, you take us to school, and we learn from your heart and from that style. You have a very unique style that is not something that people really pick up today. So it's fun. It's fun to be, and I felt the same way with Michael and Dick.
Yeah.
I felt like we were all just staring at what you were doing, trying to figure out what is she doing. It's so cool.
I remember that day, Dick Tunney was leaning up against that post there, and he was, he's played for Sandy Patty and some pretty big name artists.
Yes.
And he just sat there, stood there like this and just going, amazing. She is just absolutely amazing. And he was so blessed.
Well, that's
by your
so
ministry.
humbling. And Bill knows that after the Lord took John to heaven, I just thought, well, I'll just fold up my music and just get blessed and listen to everybody else. And Bill said, oh, no, you're coming. I said, I don't know, Bill. And he encouraged me lovingly. I'll be 82 in April, and I kept thinking, why would an old lady still be able to be used? But I just feel if God opens the door, I would be wrong to say no, and so that's why I'm here today, because I just wanted
And
to help.
thankfully you came to that concert because it was one of the years we did it. It was near your birthday, if you remember.
Yes, it was.
And you were playing on the piano that was right in the center, and we didn't plan on this. But after you played, you turned around the audience and you said, this would be really a nice present for my birthday.
What a big mouth I have.
And immediately 2 longtime friends in the ministry walked back to the soundboard and said, he'll pay for half and I'll pay for the other half.
Oh my goodness.
And we got your birthday present. You just don't have it. It's
Yes,
ours.
It sits here for you whenever you want to come play.
I couldn't use it anyway where I live
Yeah.
as far as the space.
Could I ask you to say something about, since you brought up age, it's something for children and young adults to learn how to play an instrument. Mm-hmm. But after the learning has taken place, then you start living life and you go through experiences. And in my thinking, the older I get, the deeper, the richer your playing is. And I believe it's from experiences that God has taken you through that are uniquely yours.
Yes, and you will find that too, Robert. I think any of us who have given over what God has given to us, given it back to him and said, Lord, however you see fit, use it, he does. And he expands it to places that we could never have imagined, and reaches people and areas that we could not have devised on our own. So I feel that the experiences that God gives us in life are never wasted if we allow him to use them right where we are. And if it's in the form of some kind of talent or sacrifice or service or whatever it is, God will show us if we want to. But if he's in it, then there's such joy and such reward in just following his plan.
Well, I think you have one more song for us. We could do this all afternoon.
No, I don't think so. Let me see what I wrote down here. Well, I'll give you a choice.
Okay, I'll choose.
All right,
Can you play God Will Take Care of You?
You read my mind.
I will. And that actually was on the list.
Every time we
Beautiful.
hear that at a hymn
Yes.
sing, we think of you.
Yes.
Someday we'll figure out how to do those chord progressions.
We've been trying to, when we play it by mistake, in part of our lineup, I hear what you're doing in my head, but I cannot make my fingers do it. So.
Yes, you could, Robert.
Oh well, yes, but we can't. We
we can't
hear
replicate it.
Nope.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
Well,
I
it's
just-
been fun having you here today. You need to know that all of our hymn sing guests really, 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 really miss you. So we got to figure out whether
Thank
we
you.
put you in bubble wrap or something and float you down from the ceiling. But we want to let you know how much we appreciate you and love you, and thank you for giving us this time this afternoon. And I trust that the podcast was a blessing to you. I want to encourage you, if you'd like to get one of Carolyn's CDs, there are 2 hymn CDs, one Christmas. Great time to think about Christmas. You can
That's
call
right.
1-800-453-7942. Talk to one of our guest services representatives. You do have to pay for them. They're not free. But I know that that ministry will really, really bless your heart. Well, Robert, next weekend is Thanksgiving weekend. I can't believe it's here already. And what's happening Thanksgiving weekend here at America's Keswick?
Well, Lord willing, Thanksgiving weekend, we'll have our single friends here with us. Dave Edwards will be here once again as our speaker. He's one of our favorites, and so it should be a great weekend with our singles friends.
Okay, so if they want to register, how do they do that?
1-800-453-7942.
Or you can visit our website, www.americaskeswick.org. Next week's podcast, we're going to actually interview one of our staff members, and you can help me with this to sort of set the stage. Corey Warren serves in our guest services department, and all summer you had her do a seminar for our guests. And I thought it would be kind of a neat thing for our podcast friends to hear what she has to talk about.
Oh, that's awesome. Corey is a unique individual, uniquely gifted, and she has a real passion for the environment and nature. And so she's done a lot of research on the uniqueness of the Pine Barrens and some of the things that are unique to our specific area. And so Corey went around and took a tour for people and just explained what is available right here in our environment. So.
Okay, but there's another part of what she does which helps us understand some of the concerns that we have with our kids and media.
Oh, yes. Social media is a wonderful tool, and it's a scary tool. I have a 12-year-old son, and believe me, I want to know what he's seeing and experiencing when he's online. And Corey has a unique way of just explaining safety nets that can be put on cell phones and computers to protect our kids from folks who would really like to do harm.
So there are lots of things that you can do. If you remember, Worship Live is Monday through Friday at 1:30 with Robert and Joyce. And then Monday, we have our podcast with Pastor Noah Lang of studying the book of Revelation. Tuesday, Lynn Wilson, our guest services manager, is doing a Bible study for women, Hope for Today. Wednesday, your sister-in-law, Dr. Lynn Johns, and our colony director, Juan Mendez, they're doing one called Recovery Unplugged. If you know somebody that's in addiction or you may be struggling in addiction in your own life, this is a great resource for you. That also rebroadcast on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Thursday, we have the Ripple podcast with Jim Lang, and then the Bob and Bill podcast. So we want to keep you busy. And there is one more we want to tell them about. James.
James Serpico will be offering what we call SPF 30, Spiritual Physical Fitness, for 30 minutes. He interjects prayer as well as scripture. And it's a physical exercise opportunity for anyone of any age and any skill level. And it's going to be a real encouragement to your heart.
Okay, and that airs in the morning?
I believe it airs in the morning, Monday through Thursday, as well as the evening.
Okay, so check it out, America's Keswick 1 on YouTube. You can also watch our podcast on Facebook Live and Boxcast. We want to thank Zach and Jesse for all their hard work in helping us with the podcast. And as we bring this week to a close, just a reminder that America's Keswick depends on friends like you to support the ministry with your prayers and with your gifts. To give a gift, you can call 1-800-453-7942, or you can donate right online on our website, www.americaskeswick.org. Hey, thanks, Carolyn, for being with us.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
Bob.
you.
Have a great day, Bill.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Will do.
God bless.